The silent arrival. The night sky was clear, stars scattered across the darkness like distant lanterns. It was supposed to be an ordinary night. Then, without warning, the world changed. At exactly 2:13 a.m., every satellite orbiting Earth picked up the same image. An enormous object, larger than any known spaceship, appearing out of nowhere. There was no entry point, no sign of travel. It was just there, silent, motionless, waiting. Governments across the world went on high alert. News channels switched to emergency broadcasts. Social media exploded with theories. Some called it a hoax, others feared an invasion. The object, now being called the Silent One, floated just beyond Earth's atmosphere. It did not move. It did not communicate. It did nothing. The world holds its breath. At NASA's command center, Dr. Evelyn Carter, one of the top astrophysicists, stared at the screen. The data made no sense. "This isn't a ship," she whispered. "It's something else." Her assistant, a young researcher named Daniel, hesitated before asking. "Something else like what?" Dr. Carter didn't answer, because she didn't know. The Silent One was a perfect black sphere, smooth like glass, yet no reflection appeared on its surface. It absorbed all signals, ignored every transmission. Radar waves disappeared into it. No heat, no sound, no life, just silence. The United Nations held an emergency meeting. Military leaders across the globe debated whether to attack. But how do you fight something that refuses to acknowledge you? For 3 days, the Silent One remained unchanged. Then, on the 4th day, something happened. The first disappearance. In a small town in Japan, a young girl named Aiko left her house to take out the trash. Her parents never saw her again. Security cameras showed her walking outside, and then vanishing in an instant. No flash of light, no shadow, just gone. Within the next 12 hours, reports flooded in from all over the world. New York, London, Sydney, Moscow. Hundreds of people disappeared without a trace. There was no pattern. Men, women, children, rich and poor, healthy and sick. The world panicked. Streets were filled with people looking up at the sky, staring at the silent black sphere. Protests erupted. Governments struggled to calm the chaos. Scientists worked without sleep, trying to find answers. Then, on the 7th day, the Silent One moved. The message. It was slight, almost imperceptible, but telescopes confirmed it. The object shifted, not towards Earth, not away, just adjusting, like a predator observing its prey. Dr. Carter sat frozen in front of her screen. "It's watching us," she murmured. And then, for the first time, Earth received a signal. Not a voice, not an image, just a single word appearing on every screen, every phone, every satellite. Selektiert. Selected for what? No one knew. But one thing was clear. The Silent One was no longer just watching. It had started choosing. And no one could stop it. The world had changed. Fear had taken over. The disappearances had reached thousands, yet there was no pattern. Scientists, soldiers, children, doctors, random people from every corner of the Earth were vanishing. One moment they were there, the next, gone. No bodies, no signs of struggle, no evidence at all. Families refused to let their loved ones go outside. Governments imposed strict curfews. Airports shut down, and major cities fell into chaos. Some believed it was an alien abduction. Others thought it was divine punishment. The Silent One remained still, floating in the sky like an all-seeing God, ignoring every missile, every drone, every desperate attempt to communicate. Then, on the 10th day, something even more terrifying happened. A military base in Nevada had been monitoring the Silent One's activity. A team of soldiers, hand-picked from the world's best, was assembled to investigate the disappearances. They had no idea what they were walking into. Their mission was simple: enter the ship and gather intelligence. A specialized aircraft carried them to the edge of space, approaching the black sphere with slow, careful movements. As they got closer, the pilots reported strange malfunctions. Compass needles spun wildly. Communication signals turned into static. A deep hum vibrated through the air, a soundless pressure that made their bones ache. Still, they pressed forward. Then, as if sensing their presence, the Silent One reacted. Without warning, the ship opened. No mechanical movement, no sound. One moment it was sealed, the next, a gaping void appeared, leading into total darkness. The lead soldier, Captain Reynolds, hesitated. His hands tightened around his rifle. "Command, we have an opening." Awaiting orders. Silence. The radios were dead. The entire team's equipment failed at once. No signal, no backup, no way to turn back. And then, from the darkness, a voice. It wasn't coming from their radios. It wasn't spoken in any language they knew. It wasn't even sound. It was inside their minds. In tier. The soldiers exchanged uneasy glances. Sweat dripped down Reynolds' forehead. His instincts screamed at him to leave. But there was no escape now. With a deep breath, he signaled the team to move forward. One by one, they stepped inside. The darkness swallowed them whole. The cameras, still transmitting their footage back to base, showed something impossible inside the Silent One. The soldiers weren't floating. They were standing on solid ground. A vast corridor stretched endlessly in all directions. Walls pulsed like they were alive. Shadows twisted unnaturally, bending and shifting as if watching. The silence was crushing, thick enough to make their breathing feel too loud. Then, the whisper came again. "You are not the first." Reynolds clenched his jaw. "Who's there?" he demanded, raising his weapon. No answer. Instead, the walls began to change. They rippled like water, and suddenly, faces appeared. Hundreds, thousands. Human faces, their mouths open in silent screams. Some were young, some old. Some had expressions of horror, others of confusion. And then, the team saw the worst part. They recognized them. The missing people. Aiko, the little girl from Japan. A scientist from Russia. A street vendor from Brazil. They were all there, their eyes empty, their faces trapped in the shifting walls of the Silent One. One soldier gasped, stumbling back. Another muttered a prayer under his breath. Reynolds felt his stomach twist. What had they walked into? Suddenly, the whisper returned, louder this time, crawling into their bones. "You have been chosen." Then, without warning, the lights went out, and the screaming began. The control room at the Nevada military base erupted into chaos. Lost contact. All signals down. Are they alive? No one had an answer. The screens that once displayed the soldiers' body cams now showed only static. Every attempt to reestablish communication failed. The team had stepped inside the Silent One. And just like the others, they had vanished. Dr. Evelyn Carter sat frozen in her chair, staring at the empty monitors. Her fingers trembled as she adjusted her headset, hoping, praying, to hear something. A heartbeat, a breath, a voice. But there was only silence. Then, out of nowhere, the static shifted. A face appeared. It was Captain Reynolds. His expression was blank, his pupils dilated, as if he were staring at something beyond human comprehension. His lips moved slowly, but the words came seconds later, as if the sound itself had to struggle to exist. "They are watching." Dr. Carter's breath caught in her throat. "Who?" she asked, gripping the edge of her desk. "Who is watching?" Reynolds' head tilted slightly. His mouth twitched, as if he wanted to smile but had forgotten how. Not who. What? Then, his image flickered, distorting like a broken signal. And behind him, something moved. A shadow. Not a shape, not a figure, just pure blackness, shifting unnaturally, defying logic. It crawled across the screen like a living void, stretching toward Reynolds' unmoving body. A deep, hollow sound filled the room. Not static, not a scream. It was laughter. Low, cold, amused. The screen cut to black. Every soldier in the control room stepped back, their faces pale. Some clutched their weapons instinctively, though they had nothing to aim at. Dr. Carter forced herself to breathe. She turned to the communications officer. "Get him back. Now." The officer hesitated. I don't know how." "The feed is dead." Carter's mind raced. The Silent One wasn't just a ship. It wasn't just an alien craft hovering in their sky. It was something else entirely. And it was playing with them. Inside the Silent One, Captain Reynolds stood frozen in the endless black corridors, his fingers twitching. He could still hear his own voice speaking through the radio, even though he wasn't the one talking. The words came from his lips, but they weren't his own. Around him, his team had disappeared. He was alone. Or so he thought. The walls shifted again. The faces returned, their empty eyes locked onto him. But now, they weren't screaming. They were whispering. "Join us." Reynolds clenched his fists. "Where is my team?" he growled. "Where are they?" The faces did not blink, did not breathe. "They are learning." A shiver ran down his spine. Learning what? This time, the answer came from behind him. "How to be like you." Reynolds spun around, rifle raised. And then he saw them. His team. Or what was left of them. They stood in the distance, perfectly still. Their uniforms were the same. Their faces were familiar, but something was wrong. Their eyes were too dark. Their bodies too stiff. Their movements too smooth, like puppets being controlled by invisible strings. And they were all smiling. Reynolds took a step back. "Team, report status." They didn't answer. Instead, they spoke at the same time, in the same voice. "We are new. We are improved. We are almost human." Reynolds' blood ran cold. His soldiers, the men and women he had fought beside for years, were gone. In their place stood something that only looked like them. Something that was trying to become them. His breath quickened. His instincts screamed at him to run. But before he could move, the shadows surged forward. And the laughter returned. Dr. Evelyn Carter hadn't slept in 3 days. The military base was in full lockdown. Armed guards stood at every exit. Generals barked orders into phones that no longer connected to the outside world. The media had been cut off. No leaks, no reports. The world still didn't know what was happening. And that terrified her even more. Reynolds' last transmission played on a loop in her mind. The frozen, eerie smiles. The way his team had spoken in perfect unison. "We are new. We are improved. We are almost human." The words made her skin crawl. The Silent One hadn't just taken those soldiers. It had changed them. But why? And more importantly, how long before it tried again? The next phase. It didn't take long to get the answer. At exactly 3:00 a.m., alarms blared through the facility. Perimeter breach. Sector 5. Carter ran to the nearest monitor. What she saw made her heart stop. Captain Reynolds was standing outside the base. He had walked over 400 miles through the desert with no supplies, no rest, no explanation, and he wasn't alone. The rest of his team stood beside him, perfectly still. Their uniforms were torn, their boots covered in dust, but their faces hadn't changed at all. Same frozen expressions, same unnatural smiles. No exhaustion, no pain. They had been missing for 6 days, and yet they stood there as if they had never left. The base commander, General Mitchell, stormed into the control room. "Carter, what the hell is this?" She shook her head. I don't know." Mitchell turned to the security team. "Get me a containment squad. Full hazmat gear, no direct contact." Within minutes, an elite force of soldiers surrounded Reynolds and his team, rifles aimed. Drones hovered above, scanning for biological anomalies. Reynolds didn't react. None of them did. Then, slowly, he raised his hand, palm up, fingers slightly curled. A gesture of invitation, or a warning. The radios crackled. The security captain spoke first. "Captain Reynolds, respond. Identify yourself." Nothing. Then, without moving his lips, Reynolds' voice echoed through the base intercom. "You are not ready." Mitchell stiffened. "What the hell?" Reynolds' head twitched, just slightly. And then, as if responding to an unheard command, all the lights in the base flickered. Screens glitched. The temperature dropped by several degrees. And then, a second voice joined him. No, not a voice. Hundreds. They spoke over the intercom, layered on top of one another, creating a sound both human and impossibly alien. "You will learn. You will evolve. Or you will end." Carter's fingers curled into fists. This wasn't just a threat. It was a choice, a test, and humanity had already been marked. The first attack. Before anyone could react, the base security cameras went black. Every screen filled with static. The power died. Emergency floodlights flickered on. Soldiers rushed to contain the intruders, moving in perfect formation. Then the screaming began. One by one, soldiers dropped their weapons, clutching their heads, eyes wide in terror. Blood trickled from their noses. No gunfire, no visible attack. Just something inside their minds. Mitchell grabbed Carter's arm. "Tell me you have a way to stop this." She didn't. She barely understood what this even was. Then, from the darkness, Reynolds spoke again. Not from his mouth. Not through a radio. Inside her head. "You are still incomplete, but you can be more." Carter's knees nearly buckled. It wasn't just a voice. It was a feeling. A presence. Inside her. Like something reaching through her thoughts. Digging. Searching. She bit her lip hard enough to draw blood, forcing herself to focus. Reynolds and his team were no longer human. They had become something else. And now, they wanted the rest of humanity to join them. She had no idea how to fight something like this. But one thing was certain. The Silent One had made its move, and Earth's next decision would determine its fate. The world was no longer in control. Every government, every military, every scientist watching from hidden bunkers, no one had answers. Reynolds and his team had been declared missing for 6 days. Then they simply walked back, changed, moving like humans, speaking like humans, but undeniably something else. The Silent One had given its warning. You will learn, you will evolve, or you will end. And then, as if waiting for a response, it had gone quiet again. But humanity wasn't about to sit back and let an unknown force dictate its future. This was war, or at least that's what General Mitchell thought. The counterstrike begins. Inside the classified war room, world leaders and military strategists gathered. The air was thick with tension. Carter sat at the edge of the room, watching as plans were drawn, weapons were authorized, and final decisions were made. Satellite images of the Silent One floated on the screens. It had not moved, had not attacked directly, but its presence alone had changed everything. People were vanishing every day. And the worst part, they were coming back. Not just the soldiers, ordinary citizens, a fisherman in Greece, a teacher in India, a pilot in Argentina. All of them returned exactly 6 days after disappearing, and all of them spoke in the same haunting, layered voice. We are learning. The United Nations declared them contaminated. Governments quarantined the returnees in secret facilities. Scientists ran every test possible: brain scans, blood work, psychological evaluations. Physically, these people were the same, but something was different inside them. Then came the first real sign of the invasion: the silent evolution. It started in Tokyo. A woman who had vanished, one of the earliest disappearances, returned home in the middle of the night. She walked through the front door without knocking, stepping into the kitchen where her husband was washing dishes. He turned to greet her, but something about her was wrong. Her movements were too smooth, her breathing too steady. She smiled. And in that moment, her husband felt something inside his own mind shift. He didn't understand what was happening. His thoughts scattered, replaced by a flood of whispers that weren't his own. He collapsed to his knees, gripping his skull. He could feel her inside his head. And then the fear was gone, replaced by understanding. By the time authorities arrived, he was sitting calmly beside his wife. When questioned, he simply said, "We are learning." It wasn't just her. This was happening everywhere. The military's last stand. General Mitchell had seen enough. "This is an infection," he growled, slamming his fist on the table. "It spreads through contact, through thoughts. We need to act now." The plan was brutal. The coordinated strike against the Silent One. Every weapon humanity had, drones, EMPs, nuclear warheads, was aimed at the unknown entity hovering above the Earth. Carter knew it was a mistake. She had been analyzing the data, the patterns, the strange physics surrounding the Silent One. "This isn't an invasion," she said firmly. "It's a test." Mitchell scoffed. "Tests don't replace human thoughts." "Maybe that's the test," she shot back. Mitchell ignored her. The final order was given. The attack was launched. The silent response. The missiles struck first, hypersonic warheads designed to penetrate deep space threats. They flew with pinpoint precision, slamming into the Silent One with unimaginable force. But nothing happened. No explosion. No impact. The missiles simply vanished. Every weapon humanity fired was swallowed by the Silent One, as if it had never existed. Then, for the first time, it moved. Not aggressively, not chaotically. Deliberately. It rotated exactly 15 degrees. And in an instant, every human on Earth heard the same words inside their minds. "You have chosen. The next phase begins." And then the sky change. The darkening. For centuries, humans had looked up at the night sky, finding comfort in the stars. But that night, the stars went out. Not just in one place. Not just in one country. Everywhere. The entire planet was plunged into an unnatural darkness, as if something vast and unfathomable had wrapped itself around Earth, blocking out the universe itself. Panic spread faster than fire. People screamed in the streets. Some fell to their knees, praying. Then the gravity shifted. Not enough to kill. Not enough to break buildings. Just enough to remind humanity that it was no longer in control. And in the absolute silence that followed, another message came. This time, it wasn't a whisper. It was a command. Evolve, or be erased. The stars were gone. For the first time in human history, the night sky was empty. No constellations, no distant galaxies, no faint glimmers of light beyond Earth's atmosphere. Just an endless, suffocating blackness stretching in all directions. And the world felt it. Something had changed. Scientists scrambled for explanations. Telescopes found nothing beyond the planet's atmosphere. Satellites sent back only static. The space station orbiting Earth, once filled with life, was silent. Then came the first real sign of what was coming next. The first transformation. It happened in New York. A man, one of the missing who had returned, stood in the middle of Times Square. No expression. No movement. Just standing there as the city panicked around him. Then his body began to change. Not violently. Not grotesquely. Smoothly. Perfectly. Unnaturally. His skin darkened, absorbing the light around him. His fingers elongated slightly, shifting into something more precise. His eyes, once human, became something else entirely. Deep. Black. Endless. A police officer approached cautiously, weapon raised. "Sir, I need you to step away from the area." The man turned slowly. And the officer froze. Not from fear, not from confusion, but because he could no longer move. Every nerve in his body refused to obey him. His mind still functioned. He could still think, still breathe, still feel his heart pounding in his chest. But he was no longer in control. The transformed man tilted his head. And then, for the first time, he spoke, not with words, but directly into the minds of everyone within a 10-mile radius. It begins. And in that moment, thousands of people across the world collapsed. Their bodies stiffened, their eyes darkened, and when they stood back up, they were no longer the same. A race against extinction. Carter watched the footage from the Nevada base, her stomach twisting into knots. "It's spreading," she whispered. Mitchell paced behind her, fists clenched. "This isn't a disease. This isn't an invasion. This is evolution." The word left Carter's lips before she could stop it. Mitchell shot her a glare. "You're saying this is natural." "No," she admitted, "but it's what they think we need." Mitchell slammed his hand against the table. "I don't care what they think. They're rewriting people." There. A loud crack cut through the room. The main doors to the control center bent inward. Something was outside. The guards raised their weapons, forming a tight perimeter. "Stay behind cover." One of them barked. Carter's pulse raced. Then, the metal door peeled open like paper, and Reynolds stepped inside. The final warning. He looked almost the same. Same uniform, same build, same calm expression. But his eyes were pure black. He took a slow step forward. No weapons, no aggression. And yet, every soldier in the room tensed as if death itself had walked in. Mitchell didn't hesitate. Fire. The gunfire was deafening. Dozens of rounds shredded through Reynolds' body. Shoulders, chest, head. He staggered back. Blood sprayed across the floor. But he didn't fall. Didn't flinch. And the wounds began to close. Instantly. As if the bullets had never touched him. Then he spoke. "You cannot fight the inevitable." Mitchell grabbed a second gun, aiming for the head. But before he could fire, Reynolds raised a hand. Mitchell's body froze, just like the police officer. His fingers twitched against the trigger, but he couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Reynolds turned to Carter. And this time, she felt something reaching into her mind. Not an attack, not control, an invitation, a glimpse of something beyond human, a future where thought and matter blended seamlessly, where humanity wasn't bound by flesh or gravity or weakness, a future without war, without hunger, without death, a future where the silent ones weren't invaders, they were guides. And then the vision shattered. She gasped, stumbling back. "No." Reynolds tilted his head. "You do not understand." "I understand just fine," she shot back, her heart pounding. "You're not saving us. You're erasing us." Reynolds didn't argue, because in his eyes she was simply wrong. The countdown. Then the alarms blared. Something massive was approaching. Every radar, every sensor, every remaining satellite, all detected the same thing. The silent one was no longer alone. More of them were coming. Hundreds, thousands, blocking out the sky. And then, as the world held its breath, the final message came. 1 hour. Choose. The countdown had begun. 1 hour. 60 minutes to decide humanity's fate. Across the world, people stood frozen, staring at the sky where the stars had once been. Now, in their place, they had arrived. Hundreds of silent ones. Not ships, not machines. Entities, each one pulsing with an eerie dark light, hovering just beyond Earth's atmosphere, waiting, watching. The message was clear. Choose. Humanity had 2 options: evolve or be erased. The divide. Inside the Nevada base, chaos erupted. "We need to fight." General Mitchell roared, shoving his way past stunned officers. "Get the nukes ready. We fire everything we have." Carter grabbed his arm. "You saw what happened last time." Mitchell's eyes burned with fury. "We have to try." "Try what?" She shot back. "You can't kill something that isn't bound by our laws of physics. They let us attack before. They let us believe we had a choice, but we never did." Mitchell yanked his arm free, his breath ragged. He knew she was right. But what other option was there? Across the room, Reynolds stood silently. He had made his choice long ago. He no longer saw this as a battle, only as an opportunity. Mitchell turned to him, face red with anger. "If you're still in there, if there's any part of you left, tell me this. What happens if we refuse?" Reynolds met his gaze, and then, without emotion, he answered, "Humanity ends." Silence fell over the room. Carter's stomach twisted. "Ends how?" Reynolds didn't blink. "You cease. You do not suffer. You do not burn. You simply stop." Mitchell clenched his jaw. "Like hell we do." The first erasure. Then it happened. Live feeds from across the world glitched. People in London, Beijing, Moscow, New York, they vanished. Not vaporized. Not turned to dust. Just gone. Entire buildings emptied in an instant. Streets that had been filled with thousands were now silent. One by one, pockets of humanity simply ceased to exist. A scientist monitoring the feeds let out a choked gasp. They're deleting us." Carter's blood ran cold. Mitchell staggered back, his tough exterior crumbling. He had fought wars, seen the worst of humanity. But this. There was no fighting something that could erase existence itself. Reynolds spoke again, his voice eerily calm. "The choice is almost complete." Carter turned to him, desperation in her voice. "What happens if we say yes?" Reynolds took a slow step forward. "You will become more." "More what?" She snapped. "More like you." Reynolds' smile was almost human. Almost. "Yes." Carter's hands clenched into fists. This wasn't an offer of survival. It was an offer of replacement. The people who had already evolved weren't the same anymore. They had been rewritten. Was that really survival? The final stand. The clock ticked down. 10 minutes left. Carter's mind raced. If humanity couldn't fight them, and if joining them meant ceasing to be human, then what option was left? Unless the silent ones had overlooked something. Something deeply human. Choice. True defiance. Carter took a deep breath. There was only one gamble left. She turned to Mitchell. "I need you to trust me." Mitchell gave a bitter laugh. "Trust you? In case you haven't noticed, we're about to be wiped out." She grabbed his shoulders. "Exactly. And if they wanted us dead, we'd already be gone. They need us to choose." Mitchell frowned. "Yeah. So what if we don't?" The words hung in the air. Reynolds tilted his head slightly, like he was processing the idea for the first time. Mitchell's eyes widened. "You're saying they need compliance," she whispered. "They need us to agree to the change. If we refuse to evolve, they erase us. But what if we don't refuse? And we don't accept either?" Mitchell exhaled slowly. "What if we just do nothing?" Carter nodded. Mitchell turned to the control center. New orders. Nobody decides. Across the world, broadcasts were sent out. Do note ACCEPT. Do note REFU is. Just exist. And then the clock hit 0. The reckoning. A deep, unnatural hum filled the air. The silent ones stopped moving. They hesitated. For the first time, they didn't understand. Humanity had not chosen. It had simply endured. Something about that was wrong. The sky rippled. The ground vibrated. The world held its breath. And then, they left. No explosions, no words, No final warnings. Just silence. The night sky returned. The stars blinked back into existence, and the silent ones were gone. The aftermath. For weeks, humanity struggled to understand what had happened. Had they won? Had they lost? Nobody knew for sure. But one thing was certain. The silent ones had come to change humanity, to mold it into something new. And in the end, the most human thing of all had saved them. Stubbornness, defiance, the refusal to be controlled. And as Carter stood beneath the returned stars, she couldn't help but wonder, would they come back? And if they did, would humanity be ready?